Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody's Thursday is off to a great start. Love to have you here with Lucas and myself. 1 o'clock, that's when we wrap up today, so we got 3 hours to go. Jump in whenever you want. 615-737-1045, that's how you do it. We've got a lot to get into. Chad Graff of The Athletic wrote a really cool feature on Derrick Henry and the greatest high school football season ever. He's going to join us here in just about 20 minutes from now. Meanwhile, we've got a couple of different news items to start with this morning. Nashville SC losing their first game in their last 11. Unfortunate. Lucas was on the call for that one last night, and we'll get his thoughts here in just a second. But today's my Friday, and I'm very excited about that because who doesn't like a short work week? Even though it's already been a short work week, there's only one problem. I'm off tomorrow because I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm going to Las Vegas for a bachelor party. I'm going to Las Vegas for a bachelor party with a bunch of dudes that I don't know. And I've had a really hard time getting myself excited about that idea. I was just telling Lucas, the things I would do to get out of this group text. I walked out of here yesterday. I had 157 messages from 14 people that I don't know. And they're all a bunch of inside jokes and things like that. And these may be wonderful human beings. I may have the time of my life in Las Vegas for the next day and a half because I'm flying in late Friday and flying out, first flight out Sunday morning. But I want this thing over with just to get myself out of the group text. And I don't know if this is like a first world, it's for sure a first world problem. But I don't know if this is something that anybody else can relate to. I hate group texts.
Now, is the group text, like the 157 messages, is that logistical things about hotels and what you're going to do, or is that just regular group text?
This group text has been active.
Foolishness.
I bleep you not, Lucas. For 6 months, all right? This group of individuals has been going back and forth. It has been at its highest volume this week, of course. Many of them apparently already at the airport or on their way out there. I'm not going until tomorrow. But there has been a sprinkling of logistics. The logistics include a club tomorrow night where we will see Steve Aoki, the DJ. Saturday's plans include a pool party where we will see Steve Aoki. Are you kidding me?
There's so much Steve Aoki.
It should be something that I should be juiced about. And yet I'm sitting here thinking like, I just can't wait to get this over with.
We are bumping back to nothing but Steve Aoki today. I hope you know that.
I'm fine with that. You better warn the audience. What percentage of the audience do you think knows who Steve Aoki is? The FM radio audience, who is probably average age of what, 55? How many of them do you think are going to immediately swerve on the road while they're driving around today because you're coming back to what's the one song called, Ghost in a Shell or something like that?
I don't even know.
Yeah. Emily in the F&M Bank chat says, that sounds like a lot of dudes for a group text. Are you sure it's not a bachelorette party? Well, I cannot confirm because, I only have two people's numbers in there. So I have no idea who these people are. It could be a bachelorette party for all I know.
Typically I like to jump on you for your first world complaints, but I do sympathize with you that there's nothing worse than getting dragged into a weekend like this where there's going to be an investment.
Yeah.
It's Vegas. It's not
fun.
cheap.
And
it's going to be fun.
With that. And the one reason why I'm okay with this is because at least based on this group text of people, names and faces of people that I don't know, nobody seems reticent to spend money. And that is the worst thing about a Vegas trip. Somebody who goes in there trying to, be overtly frugal.
Right. But the fact of not knowing anybody on the trip.
Yeah, I hate that.
That makes it tough to get excited for. Like, we're going to Vegas. Who you going with? I don't know.
There's a bunch of
guys.
Bunch of dudes. I'm basically going on a Vegas blind date. Now, I know the groom, or so groom is marrying one of my best friends from my hometown of Evansville, Indiana. So this is a couple that I've known for a long time. Very excited for them. I can't actually go to their wedding, which is hilarious because it's the first weekend of training camp. So I told them, listen, until I have my schedule, like I'm probably not going. So, but I am going to the bachelor party. And at this point, like, I'm not trying to have a bad attitude about this. I sound like I have a bad attitude about this. I love Las Vegas. It's great. I haven't been in a while. I've been waiting for the Titans to play out there because I'm trying to go cover a game in the Roomba. But Teresa Walker, by the way, has tweeted us saying she feels attacked. Aoku? Not Aoki, but Aoku. Not a dad joke, but a mom joke. Either way. Fort 0904 says, no shock there. Buck doesn't want poor friends. No, it's not that. All right? There's nothing like, I'm sure I sound like a snob when I say that, but there's nothing worse than going on a trip, and a trip that is probably going to involve some form of expense and somebody dragging things down because, it's just a little, they don't want to spend $300 on something. They only want to spend $200 on something. Like, you know what I'm talking about with that? Like, those kind of people drive me crazy.
Yes, but there's also the flip side of that where you're dragged into like a bachelor party group text that you don't really know anybody in, and you're like, oh, great, we want to go spend $500 on this dinner and then $400 at this event. Like, fantastic. I'm going to go spend all my money in a weekend in Vegas with people I don't really know or care about. To me, is just as bad.
Yeah, no, it's the combination of both. It's the combination of both. Like I said, D Good says Buck doesn't like people. Depends on the day. But no, I'm happy to be going out there. It's one of those things where it's a minor annoyance, but it's been going on for 6 months. Like if it was just something that happened within the last couple of weeks, like they put everybody in the group text, and these are all like clearly like boys from high school, boys from college, right?
Yeah, like they're in a tight circle,
really, really,
and
good
you're just
buddies.
coming into the picture.
And
yeah,
I'm
that's
just
the worst.
like, hey man,
yeah, that is the worst. I would want no part of that. I don't even know why you're going on this trip.
because I can't go to the wedding.
You don't know anybody in the group. They're all in this tight little circle that you're not a part of. Yeah. You can't even go to the wedding. I would bow out. I'd say, sorry, this whole situation's just not for me.
I'll be honest, and I'm only being this kind of honest because I know his dad listens to the radio show, and he's already on the plane, so it's too late. I can't hurt his feelings. I would not have gone. I seriously thought about 17 different times backing out of this thing, and then it just got to the point where it's already June, and I'm like, okay, I can't back out. There's too many people. There's too many hotels. There's too many logistics tied up in me being there. It's kind of like backing out of a wedding like 2 weeks before. Like dinner's already paid for. Logistics, your nameplate has already been printed and all these things. You've already been accounted for by the bride and groom in all the different wedding plans that they've got to make. And then you bail. I've definitely been that person before. I've been that person on multiple occasions. It makes me a bad person. I will admit it. But I have had so many different people tell me how excited they are that I'm going to Vegas, and I'm just like, yeah, but.
Like excited for you?
Yeah. Because, Vegas trip with the guys, that sounds great. Except I don't know any of these people.
They're not your guys.
They're not my guys. And they may well be. Like, maybe this will be a spiritual experience like Bonnaroo on Sunday. I doubt it. If anything, I'll be asking for salvation at the end of the trip.
It's going to be like a rom-com. You're going to end up driving around Vegas like Zoolander with "Wake Me Up Before You Go dancing in the car."
Well,
these guys are going to become your best friends.
Well, the scenario is very much a Hangover-esque situation, right? Where you just throw a bunch of dudes together.
Who are you?
I'm scared that I'm going to be Doug. Like, I'm scared that I'm going to be the person who's lost and passed out on the rooftop for a day and a half.
Well, Doug is the groom.
Right.
But you're on the outside looking in here. And in that movie, that was Alan. So you are Zach Galifianakis in this situation.
Yeah, but Bert is too much of an Alan already for me to supplant him as Alan. And he's already done the Vegas thing. Man, person, all.
Bert would make a great Alan, but I'm just saying, if the shoe fits.
I mean, I'm down to be Alan. Alan had a great time. I'm not the one responsible for, going out and what was the thing that they took at the beginning of the night? Was it Like that
The shot they took on the rooftop?
Was it a shot, or I didn't know if they took pills, or like there was something at the start of the movie?
At the beginning of the movie, when the night begins, they just take a shot of something, maybe Jaeger's, I don't know, on a rooftop.
But he drugs the Jaeger, right? Like he drugs
that's
something.
Right. That's what it was. That's
you know what I'm saying? Like
Alan slipped something in.
So like
he cuts his hand to be blood brothers, and then he drugged the drink.
I'm not interested in cutting my hand. I'm not interested in being blood brothers with anybody. I'm not interested in Jaeger, and I'm certainly not interested in being the one responsible for sourcing party drugs. Like, that's just not something that's going to be within the purview of my responsibilities this weekend. I'm just there. So, like, if anything, I'm more inclined to be Stu because I'm the one reticent about the trip, and then I'll black out and come back with a face tattoo. Look forward to that on Monday. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. We'll bring up the level of discourse here. Coming up next with Chad Graff, who wrote about Derrick Henry and the greatest high school football season ever. We'll get you some details on this feature that he did with great reporting and details coming up next. Lucas just got in my ear and said, go quick. He doesn't know what's going to happen here.
This is a total wild card to me. It's clean version, it's instrumental, whatever, but I don't know. I mean, this is what you're going to enjoy over the weekend in Vegas.
But this is Steve Aoki. Not once, but twice. Keep it going. We don't know where this is going to go. You scared? I think this is just what it is.
Yeah, I think it's just that for hours.
It's just for hours and hours and hours and hours. No, wait, the drop's coming quickly.
I don't want the drop. I don't want the drop. I have no concept of what the drop will constitute. Could be anything.
Jael says, I can see Buck with a face tat. Lonzo says, guys doing a bachelor party in Vegas is the same as a bachelorette party in Nashville. I do not dispute any of these things. I don't know that I'm the face tat guy, although, it's been a while since I've been to Vegas. So perhaps something has been, dormant. It's going to be awakened as soon as you hit the, what's the name of the airport out there? It's something ridiculous like John Wayne Airport. Anyway, Rick in Hendersonville is next.
Hey, Buck, want to try and help you get out of this trip to Vegas.
Oh, please, God, it's tomorrow. Give me something good, Rick.
You know about what you'd be spending, which the money I know doesn't bother you. But if you really want out of it, just call the groom and say, look, man, some stuff came up, but what I want to do is send you X amount of dollars to put towards your bachelor party.
Ooh.
Use it as you wish.
Rick, this is genius. Thank you for the call. Rick has found me the perfect solution. I can buy my way out. Rick, the number of weddings that I've done that with, where I've said, hey, I'm not going to be able to come to your wedding, especially for like close friends and like college roommates and stuff like that. Basically, I've just been making it up to people for the past basically every year that I've done this job because, if you get married basically between the months of August and February, I can't be there. I just, get a hold of their registry and try and make sure that it's made up to them that way. So I think it's an excellent idea with less than 24 hours. Well, yeah, about 24 hours before my flight leaves to try and buy my way out of this Vegas trip. Either way. Let's get into a discussion about a really, really good piece that I read on The Athletic last couple of weeks, by Chad Graff, who joins us now. Derrick Henry's traveling roadshow and the greatest high school football season ever. Chad, thank you for joining us. Did you enjoy your stay in Yulee, Florida?
I actually have never been to Yulee, Florida. I did all the interviews over the phone, but
really?
It's like a cool place, kind of situated right between that Florida-Georgia line.
So that of course, for the audience well knows at this point. I would imagine the vast majority of them are Derrick Henry experts 8 years into his career. But Yulee, Florida is the place that Derrick Henry is from. And Chad did a great piece on theathletic.com where you can go to read all the great work that he and his colleagues do in the world of sports journalism about the greatest high school football season ever. So I guess let's start from the beginning, Chad. What about this piqued your interest, other than, every once in a while we'll see a Derrick Henry high school highlight and it looks like something out of science fiction.
Right. So that was obviously the main impetus for this, was just, every now and then you'll be on social media and see somebody put out how just outrageous his high school stats were in Florida. But the other thing, upon seeing those stats and looking into it a little bit, that fascinated me and I thought was so cool was, nowadays it feels like if there's a player of that stature who is that absurdly otherworldly good that from the time they're in middle school, this guy is just going to be dominating people, they usually have their own private coach and training system, and they go to some academy like IMG, and they transfer high schools 3 times, and just making sure that they are as best properly developed as they can be. I get it. It's hard to fault that. But what's so interesting to me about Derrick Henry is he goes to Yulee High School, which is just his regional town high school, and they're just starting a football program. When he's in 8th grade is the very first year that they have a team. So his coach is like, yeah, we didn't really have a weight room or barely a practice field. Like, they were just figuring out what in the world they were doing. And so it's fascinating to me that a one-in-a-generation star, a guy of Henry's ability, stuck it out at that school and didn't get swayed as many athletes, today might, to go to the fancy private school with the best training and the nicest locker room and all that. But he stuck it out with his middle school teammates, and I just think it's a really cool story.
He is notoriously, shy is the wrong word, Chad, but he's not very open in terms of media. He's got a great personality. You hear his teammates talk about it all the time, but 8 years into his career, there's not a ton that we really do actually know about Derrick. I didn't, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I didn't notice any quotes from him in your piece. Was he not available to speak to you?
Yeah, I asked if he wanted to talk and told him it would be strictly about high school, that I wasn't going to ask about Alabama or the NFL or anything, but he politely declined, didn't want to participate. And his high school coaches kind of said something similar of, he wasn't the big rah-rah guy. He wasn't going to be, convening locker room sessions, debating over, MJ versus LeBron or things like that. But, that very simply, if you said, hey, we're giving you the ball 60 times tonight, you'd be like, all right, cool, coach, let's do it. Like, very kind of soft-spoken, mild-mannered, but once those pads came on, kind of just otherworldly.
It's Chad Graff of The Athletic is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. The piece that he wrote on the greatest high school football season ever, featuring Derrick Henry, is available at theathletic.com for you to read. Very, very highly recommend it. He is, he's a superstar in the NFL, and it's almost like, I guess the closest parallel to him would be like Kawhi Leonard. He's a star of this scale. His talent is such that he deserves to be on the marquee, and yet, like I said, he's not really out there that much. There's not really that much known about him. He'll do, the odd Old Spice commercial here or there, but beyond that, there's not a ton of visibility. How rare is that in today's world of professional sports, especially in the social media age?
Super rare. I mean, I used to cover the Minnesota Vikings and thus covered Dalvin Cook, who I think was one of very few players over the last decade who could argue, at least for one season, to maybe be in Henry's category. And he was very different. Dalvin Cook was affable and in front of all of the cameras, and team, he was the face of the franchise for a long time, basically up until Justin Jefferson showed up. So very different in that sense. And I think the other thing that is so different about Derrick Henry is that this is a league, for better or worse, that is kind of trending, I think it's fair to say, anti-running back in terms of they're not getting the same money, they're not drafted as high. A lot of analytics will tell you that they're not quite as valuable as perhaps we once thought. And also, the longevity just isn't there. Like, by the time these guys reach the NFL, they've been the stars of their middle school teams, their high school teams, getting crazy amounts of carries, and then in college, getting tons and tons of carries. And what's fascinating to me about Derrick Henry is that he was all of that. It's absurd in high school that he was getting 60 carries a game and having 7 touchdowns and just unbelievable stuff. And then, of course, did it at Alabama, and now has done it for as long as he's done it in the NFL at a position that involves so much wear and tear and usually injuries. Like, I think it just speaks to the freakish nature of the athlete that he is and who he is, that at a position where guys just wear down, he's kind of bucking the trend and is one of very, very few of the last probably 30 years to be playing at this high of a level, have this much stardom this far into his career at running back.
When you were looking over his high school statistics, what was the one number that blew you away more than any other? Because I'm looking through just his senior year stats, Chad, and some of the numbers on there, whether it's average yards per carry, whether it's yardage totals, whether it's longest runs or the number of carries, they are all, they all look like typos. It looks ridiculous.
It does. And there's so many different ways that you can kind of laugh about the absurdity of it and how crazy, especially those senior year statistics were. But one of my favorite things was in talking to those high school coaches, I was fascinated by it. Like, hey, what was it like the first time that you gave him 50 carries in a single game? Like, in the moment, were you thinking, okay, that's 38, 39? Like, did you have a cutoff? Is there a pitch count? And so a couple of things. The head coach, Bobby Ramsey, said that he didn't know until after the game. Somebody came up to him and was like, hey, did you know Derrick had like 51 carries tonight? And he was like, oh my God, I'm worried that like Child Protective Services is going to, call me because of the amount of the workload that I've given this kid. But then in talking to some of the offensive coordinators, they were also like, look, what did you want me to run? We're
Yeah.
a brand new program in Yulee, Florida. Like, we had two plays. It was Derrick Henry left and Derrick Henry right. And guess what? Those plays worked all the time. Like, one of the coaches told a funny story about how, they go to throw a pass and the guy gets sacked and suddenly it's 3rd and 39 and the head coach is cussing him out on the side like, what are you doing with Derrick Henry? Stop throwing the ball. And he's like, fine, you don't want me to throw the ball? It's 3rd and 39. Let's run Derrick Henry left. And sure enough, he runs 40 yards and picks up the first down because, that's just the freak that Derrick Henry is.
At Chad Graff is where you can follow him. TheAthletic.com is where you can read all the work that he does. That's where you can find this feature on Derrick Henry and his legendary high school career. How, and I know you talked to some coaches about a variety of different things, as you mentioned, but when you asked them how difficult it was for them to schedule games with Derrick Henry as a player on their roster, what was the reaction that you got?
Well, so it's funny. At first, they're a brand new program, and all of the big powerhouses, Gainesville and whatever else, like, yeah, sure, we'll come beat up on you if you want. And then Derrick Henry has his freshman year, and after that freshman year, he starts to gain a little bit of attention, has an incredible sophomore year, and after that sophomore year, it's not like college where they're scheduling 15 years out, so they're, calling around trying to find a couple of early season games. And the opposing coaches start saying, yeah, when does that running back of yours graduate? And they're like, oh, he's got 2 more years. Like, great, call us in 3 years, and I'll play you then. And so they were laughing, and they used to joke that it was basically like they were selling cancer, that if you're going to try to get a team to play against Derrick Henry, you'd have about as much luck selling cancer. So they ended up having to schedule crazy harder games against much better teams, which, interestingly, I think set up some fascinating matchups where this, as a new program, as we've mentioned, was basically Derrick Henry and not a lot else. And so they're playing up against 4-star guys, 5-star guys, where the defensive line was much bigger than Derrick Henry's offensive line. And it just set up, I think some fascinating matchups where it became even more impressive the numbers that Derrick Henry was putting up, considering he was not surrounded by the same talent that he was going up against.
What did you learn about the importance of the position to him? Because he, as you mentioned correctly, running back, in fact, all over the headlines right now, there's a pile of them, of famous running backs sitting out there in free agency. Dalvin Cook, one of them. You've got guys like Saquon Barkley out there arguing for the running backs and that they should be paid. Zeke Elliott in that pile, of that collection of running backs out there in free agency. Derrick Henry has always valued the running back position, and famously Nick Saban, when recruiting him, tried to get him to play defensive end. How much did you learn, if anything, about the value of the position to Derrick?
A ton, and that's a really good point that I'm glad that you brought up, is a lot of the college scouts that came through looked at him and said, sure, he's a good running back, but, look at this size. Look at his arms. Look at how he's built. This guy could be a crazy good edge rusher. We might be able to make this guy a good tight end. There are other positions out there for this guy. They were basically salivating, saying, put him at outside linebacker, have him blitz off the edge or drop back in coverage. He's a freak athlete. We can do some crazy things with this guy that, ultimately probably pay more in the NFL than running back does. And yet he was very clear in telling his high school coaches, any college that comes in here and says anything other than we want him to play running back and nothing else, we're not going to try him at other positions, we just want him as a running back, I only want to talk to those schools, because anybody who is thinking about putting me at defense as an edge rusher or linebacker or tight end or whatever, I'm done with that. That's how important it was to him to play running back. And I also think it's fascinating because, let's face it, it probably would have worked. You put him on the edge, I bet he would have been an awesome SEC edge rusher and probably would have made a boatload of money and had a bunch of NFL sacks. But it was so important to him to be able to carry the ball and affect plays and, kind of play the position that he grew up doing. So he was not about to give that up, which is interesting.
12,124 yards and 153 touchdowns. Never had a game with under 100 yards in his high school career. It's just I know you know these numbers because you wrote the feature on it. I read that, though, Chad, at the end of your piece, And I can't, it's like every day, I've seen him every day for the last 8 years, basically, since he got drafted here because of the job that I do. And it's like seeing him in person. Like every damn day, I look at him and just say, holy hell, if you are not the biggest, baddest thing I've ever seen in my life, those numbers are going to exist basically into perpetuity. Because I don't know. I mean, surely at some point we'll see another athletic freak of this caliber, but I don't know how often these kind of guys come around.
Well, it's incredible because I think he's one of the very few guys where you could tell just about any story about them and their high school time and growing up and the athlete that they were, and it's all believable. Like those video game numbers, the stories of 50, 60 carries, 8 touchdowns. Like there's only a handful of athletes over the last 50 years that kind of have that stature. Like Bo Jackson's that way, where you could tell any Bo Jackson story and you're like, yeah, anybody else that sounds crazy, but with him it's believable. Or Allen Iverson and, his football days plus his basketball days. There's probably only like 5 guys like that, and Derrick Henry is one of those that the stories sound outlandish and the stats look like typos and it all seems completely crazy, and yet everybody who was there for it and got to witness it swears by it and says, yes, this is 100% true. He really was just this good.
At Chad Graff is where you can follow him. TheAthletic.com is where you can go to read the feature. Last one for you, Chad, and we appreciate you making some time. I'm sure you're busy. Well, actually, I guess this is the time of year when we're least busy, one would imagine, but I'm sure you're busy nonetheless. Just by coincidence, this whole Titans-Patriots DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes is going on. We know what the situation has been here locally. I wonder what your view of DeAndre Hopkins in New England and any potential for a future marriage between those two, where does that kind of stand right now?
There's a lot of optimism here in New England, both internally with the team and, just from a fan perspective, that DeAndre Hopkins will eventually end up signing with the Patriots. There's always optimism, I think, that your favorite team is about to get, potentially a future Hall of Famer. But I think what a lot of Patriots fans and frankly the Patriots are leaning on is that Bill Belichick has long had such a great respect for DeAndre Hopkins. He compared him to Chris Carter and said he was one of the toughest players that he's ever had the game plan for before a game against Arizona last year, where, of course, DeAndre Hopkins was playing. So from that perspective, I think DeAndre Hopkins would be a great fit, especially since, like the Titans, the Patriots could use some upgrades at wide receiver, and they want to know what they have in quarterback Mac Jones before deciding on his 5th-year option. And if you give him a good weapon like Hopkins, you probably have a better sense of if Mac Jones is the guy or not. And yet, I think maybe the hang-up is in the cultural fit. DeAndre Hopkins, at this point in his career may not be practicing every day. He had to kind of be worked through some things in Arizona, and that historically has not been a good fit for Belichick, who wants you on the practice field, make sure that they're on the practice field probably as much, if not longer, than any other team. So we'll see. Hopkins respects Belichick. Belichick loves Hopkins. The Patriots have cap space. They have a need at wide receiver. But now it's just a matter of whether it's all going to fit together.
Chad, thank you so much for the time. At Chad Graff is where you can follow him, and you can read him at theathletic.com. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
It's Chad Graff with us on 104.5 The Zone. The Henry thing is really, really fun to read. And just, I don't know if this is me being selfish because I've gotten to cover him. And like I said, we just know so damn little about him, honestly. And that's his right. It's hard for athletes of that scale to be as private successfully as Derrick Henry is. But I would just like a little more from him, given how unbelievable his entire football career has been. And I understand.
Only player to rush for 2,000 yards in a season at the high school, college, and NFL level.
Right? Like, is Kawhi Leonard not a great comparison for him? Now, I mean, you could argue that, well, I don't know, that Derrick's been more sustainable than Kawhi. Kawhi's definitely broken down, but I think Kawhi's definitely been in the NBA longer than Derrick Henry's been in the NFL. But just in terms of the scale of star power that both of those dudes possess and the fact that, yeah, they are damn near unquotable. at this point, intentionally. And like I said, that's their right. But I would love to hear Derrick Henry's perspective on his high school career. Like in a truly honest moment where he's comfortable with the setting, where he's comfortable with who he's talking to, and maybe that situation doesn't exist. But man, is it fun to read about. And certainly you can always go back and watch the highlights on YouTube. We are going to be joined by an IndyCar driver who is participating in the Music City Grand Prix coming up next. We're very excited about this. Stingray Rob is the man's name. With a name like that, you'd better be a badass. We're going to find out what Stingray Rob's all about coming up next. Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, not that far away. August 4th through the 6th, it's coming up. We are very pleased to be joined by IndyCar driver Stingray Rob, who's with us here on 104.5 The Zone. What's happening, brother?
Hey, how are you?
Man, I'm doing good. All right, so I'm going to make a bet with you to start off this interview. How many questions do you think that I can get through before I ask you about your name? Because I have to imagine that's like, if not the first question that people ask, it's the second.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet it's the first one, but if you want to try and impress me, I'm going to go with my guess being number 3.
No, okay. If I think I can do this, we'll see. We'll find out throughout the course of the interview.
Okay.
Stingray Rob here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So, listen, at your age, 21, I'm sure it gets brought up to you plenty. You don't need to hear it from me, but like the experience that you're having, and obviously this being your first real season in the middle of all this, what's it been like?
Oh, man, it's been so awesome. This is a dream come true. You know, I think that most people think that you're just a driver that happened to be lucky enough to be in IndyCar, and that's not what it is. It takes a village to get to this point, and we've been doing this for about 15 years now, trying to get to this level, and so to finally realize that dream is really cool.
So I know that this will be your first time participating in the Sunday race here in Nashville, but you're familiar with the track. You participated in the Music City Light race last year, correct?
That's correct. I finished second last year there, actually.
And so in that experience, what can you tell the audience about the track? Because they know, the details. They know what it looks like geographically here in downtown Nashville. But from the perspective of a driver, what is the most distinctive thing about the track that they put on here for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix?
Yeah, I think that everyone can kind of know this already, but the bridge is the most unique thing about the street course there in Nashville. And one of the most unique things about it is the expansion joints. And so it changes from lap to lap, or which way the wind's blowing, or if it's getting hotter or cooler. The track itself is moving around. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult for us drivers that are flying off the bridge to hit a brake zone or whatever else it may be. You know, we're doing speeds upwards of 150, 160 miles an hour around that place. And so to have the track constantly be changing, it just adds an extra element of surprise to the place.
So the driving style in terms of the level that you were at last year to now participating in the NTT IndyCar series, what is the biggest or most distinct difference to you?
Yeah, moving up from Indy Next to IndyCar is not necessarily the biggest step in speed and driving styles, but there's an extra element of pit stops. Last year in the Indy Next series, we were only doing about 45-minute races. Well, now moving to IndyCar, our races are anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe even more than 3 hours long. And so during that time, you have to do several pit stops for tires and fuel. And in that time, strategies are different. Different plans are made up by different teams, and they're all changing at all times because there's yellow flags and everything else, especially at Nashville. Nashville is one of the tracks where it seems to breed attrition, and lots of yellow flags and lots of chaos, but that's what makes the racing so good around that place.
IndyCar driver Stingray Rob here with us on 104.5 The Zone. That's 3. That's 3. We did it. I don't know what I win, but we did it. And I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of you. We did it together, Stingray, and I appreciate you hanging out with us here today on the show. So, I mean, other than the participation itself, I know you got to be juiced up for it. This experience in Nashville, what have you enjoyed most given, your time here last year, and what are you looking forward to most heading into this upcoming series?
Nashville is a great track, not just because it's a good circuit, but because of the location. Being right downtown Nashville, we can stay in the downtown, and we can go over and see the sights and be a fan and a tourist, and then go over to the racetrack. It's not too far of a walk, and so that's one of the unique things about it is you don't have to drive in. You can just walk into the track, see all the sights. You got a lot of country music stars that are playing there, and so it allows it to be not just a race, but an event. And so the circus kind of rolls in the town, and we start performing, and it makes it a good time.
Well, we certainly do the circus well down here. Stingray Rob, kind enough to give us some of his time here on 104.5 The Zone. Continued health and success. We're looking forward to having you guys down here in August. And like I said, we appreciate you stopping by. I know you got to be busy right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. We'll see you in August.
That's right. That's Stingray Rob with us on 104.5 The Zone. Did you want me to ask him about his name?
Yeah, pretty disappointed, to be honest.
Do you know how tired that man has to be about answering questions about his name?
Yes, but it is a burden he bears. Right?
Do you know that it's not a nickname? That's his actual name.
That's incredible.
I did the research. That's because the only thing that I could find, I mean, that's not true. It's not the only thing that I could find on him. But the thing that most populated the Stingray Rob search when you told me that we would be speaking to him yesterday, all about his name. Literally the first line in the Indy Star, where he participated in the Indy 500 this year, they did a piece on him. The first sentence of the article, no, Stingray isn't a nickname.
So first name Sting, middle name Ray, last name Rob.
No. First name Stingray. Stingray on his birth certificate. He's not named after the fish either. His parents are Chevy enthusiasts. He is named for the Chevy Corvette Stingray.
Amazing. If you're going to have the name Stingray, you have to grow up to do something really, really cool.
I am rooting for him one, because he was kind enough to come on the radio show. Two, because this man's name is Stingray, because it's not a nickname, because he's not named for a fish, he's named for a Corvette. Sign me up.
I think
I'm in.
I think he has already partly lived up to that name, though. Like, I feel like he's already lived up to that name.
At 21 years old.
Just growing up to be an IndyCar driver at 21 years old with the name Stingray, yes.
So you think that he should be complacent? You think he's achieved the mountaintop?
No, I don't think that. But I do think that he has accomplished that part. He has lived up to that name, because there are not many things cooler than driving a car at over 200 miles per hour on a weekly basis.
What are you most looking forward to about the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix? Because you and I don't know, Bert's not coming with us, is he? He continues to try and latch himself onto these things. He has a new home. I don't understand why he keeps trying to barge back into ours. I don't know if Bert's going to be there with us, but you and I are at least going to be in the Turn 9 Club. What are you most excited about being down there for?
The Zooms.
Just the cars whipping by you.
Yes. What else? I mean, there's a lot to be excited about, but what else tops that? What else could possibly top that feeling of when you're right up on the fence? And during the race on Sunday, qualifying is fun because you get a good look at every car coming down. But the Sunday race, when they are coming down at 1,000,000 miles an hour, yes, that is absolutely the best part.
I have the one thing that tops what you've just described. It's the super trucks. It's the super trucks flying through the air at moments when I don't expect to see a whole ass truck flying through the air, just walking through the course because it's like a maze that's set up in the footprint of Nissan Stadium on the East Bank, basically. You are wandering around, you're wandering through parts of the track, and then all of a sudden I don't know if it's called a super truck, but it is a super truck race. One of these little mini trucks just flies over the top of you, ramping off some ledge that they've created on the track. That is my favorite part because I don't know where they're coming from. All of a sudden, I just see out of my peripheral vision trucks literally flying through the air.
It is incredibly entertaining. It is. But on the Sunday race, when they're rounding a corner or when they're coming down the bridge, I love to see them come down the bridge. And it's so loud that you can turn to the person next to you and say something, and they'll just see your mouth moving and not be able to hear a word. Like you can close your ears and scream as loud as you can, and you won't be able to hear yourself. It is absolutely electric.
So the Ally 400 is this weekend too, right?
Yeah.
The NASCAR race at the Nashville Superspeedway. I'm going to be out of town. Otherwise, I would love to go. I've never been to a NASCAR race. The only motorsports events I've been to are IndyCar. Been to the Indy 500 twice, but I told you that was a little bit of a different situation. That track seats 300,000 people.
Yeah.
The infield has both a concert hall area, miles and miles of tailgating fields for RVs, and an 18-hole golf course. So when I say that I've been to the Indy 500 twice and never seen a car, understand that's a much easier feat to accomplish than you might imagine. But I've done the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix twice now. And we'll be back there for year 3. Apparently, they have some grand announcement to make, given that the stadium construction situation is obviously going to impact that race, or at least the race as it's currently constituted at some point. Ramon, Kayla, and Will had the president of the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix on their show yesterday. He said that an announcement of some kind is going to be coming up here in the near future. Let's take a phone call quickly, 615-737-1045. How about John up next? Hey, John.
Hey guys, I had a thing with the name Stingray. Man, he better have a cool haircut, kind of like Wild Thing from the Major League Baseball, and instead of having a rat tail, he needs a stingray tail on the back of his, hanging down from the back of his neck. If he's gonna be called Stingray, you gotta look real cool.
I Google. I mean, he's 21 years older. He's an IndyCar driver. He's probably not lacking for cool factor, should we say? Thank you for the call. But I would say that stingray tail's not allowed. Stingray. You know why stingray tails should be cancelable?
Oh,
Don't screw up his name.
Steve Irwin.
You were scared. I saw it in your eyes. Yes. The Stingray killed Steve Irwin, and we cannot forgive Stingrays for that. Coming up next, the most impactful coordinator change in the SEC. There are quite a few that we're going to go through, and we'll get into which ones are going to be the most impactful coming up next.
It is 11:03. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. On Wednesday night, Nashville Soccer Club saw its 10-game unbeaten run come to an end with a 1-0 loss at Montreal, conceding a 28th-minute goal from Bryce Duke. Nashville does remain second in the Eastern Conference and in the Supporters' Shield standings with a road trip to Columbus coming up on Saturday night. College baseball, Florida advanced to the National Championship Series, a 3-2 win over TCU on Wednesday. They will await the winner between Wake Forest and LSU, who will play tonight at 6 p.m. LSU beat the Demon Deacons 5-2 on Wednesday to stay alive. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour, welcome in. Happy to have you guys. If you're just now popping on the show, if you've been hanging out with us for the first hour, we appreciate you spending some more of your day with us. 615-737-1045. Lucas, I saw Bert, and then I didn't see Bert. I don't know if he's back there. I hate that I can't see him. It's basically, it's like living in a perpetual jump scare.
Call him the Red Flash for a reason.
Yeah, he moves quickly for a man that size. Either way, Bert might be back there. He might not. Who's to say? You can be on the phone line if you want to. 615-737-1045. As I mentioned, you can also jump in and participate via the F&M Bank chat. Impact of coordinator changes in the SEC this year. That's the next topic of discussion that we're going to get into. Because I knew, Lucas had asked me this question. He'd compiled a list of coordinator changes around the various SEC programs. And he said, basically, well, I don't want to steal the bit. You're going to ask me how many coordinators actually changed or how many coordinator jobs saw a change of face?
Not including first-year head coaching hires, which this offseason was Hugh Freeze at Auburn.
So we're removing, because Hugh Freeze is calling the plays.
Right. I'm talking about, well, no, I'm just talking about coordinator change. It is Hugh Freeze's offense. Philip Montgomery's his offensive coordinator. But regardless of that, I'm talking about coordinator changes under a head coach.
Yes. I would say, so this is off, we're not counting special teams, yeah?
Yeah, not counting, although there is one notable one. I realized today that John Jancic is now the special teams coordinator at LSU, former defensive coordinator at Tennessee under Butch Jones. But yes, no, just offensive and defensive coordinators.
I am going to say that 20 coordinators, 20 different coordinators, whether they're new, whether they're familiar faces in new roles. I'm going to say 20.
Overshot it. It's 13.
I mean, I went high.
Yeah, but it's still a heavy number. 13 changes at offensive or defensive coordinators.
See how bad it is for the bit when I undermine you by going way higher with a number?
Yeah, I definitely wish you had said like 6 or something. Would have been more satisfying.
Sorry.
But, I mean, what is top of mind to you when you think about coaching changes in the – I mean, it's obvious,
Alabama.
right? It's Alabama.
Yeah, it's Alabama. It's offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. It's defensive coordinator Kevin Steele for the 8,000th time with Nick Saban. It is that because it's a departure from what they have done in the last couple of years around their OC, and that is what most interests me.
Yeah, I think it's also about the lead up to that change, hiring Tommy Rees from Notre Dame. I think a little bit underwhelming for Alabama fans, where they've been spoiled over the course of the last few cycles, bringing in the likes of Steve Sarkisian, who has had success as a head coach and now is at Texas, Bill O'Brien, a former NFL head coach, and now Tommy Rees comes in from Notre Dame, Kevin Steele, kind of an old friend of Nick Saban's. So, yes, we can go ahead and say there are no hot takes here about any coordinator changes in the SEC that are more important than what Alabama did. There's no question there are more eyeballs on that, and there should be, because this stands to be one of the most pivotal off seasons in Alabama football since Nick Saban took over there. It's going to be fascinating as they go back to maybe what we knew of Nick Saban offenses early in his Alabama tenure. Otherwise, what else? What else can you think of other than Alabama making a change at offensive and defensive coordinator?
Todd Monken leaving Georgia.
Todd Monken leaving Georgia. You remember who replaced Todd Monken at Georgia?
Mike Bobo.
Mike Bobo.
Look at me.
Who was already in the building. SEC aficionado, Buck Rising.
Eat it.
Mike Bobo, who has a ton of experience as a play caller. This is a guy that's been an offensive coordinator at Georgia, at South Carolina, at Auburn, was the head coach at Colorado State where he called the plays. He was the offensive coordinator at Georgia from 2007 through 2014. Matt Stafford, Aaron Murray. Mike Bobo has had success as the OC at Georgia, and he was already in-house. He was in the building and was elevated, kind of like last year when Georgia had to make a change at defensive coordinator with Dan Lanning departing to take over as head coach at Oregon. You were never concerned about Kirby Smart and the Georgia defense with what they were able to do in-house and with Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, etc. I think the same goes for this Georgia offense. Largely, you know what you're going to get. You know the offense is going to be funneled through the likes of Brock Bowers. You expect Carson Beck to take over as the starter this year. What that looks like, we don't quite know, but there's just not enough evidence for us to sit here and say Georgia's offense is going to take a massive step back because Carson Beck is their quarterback and Mike Bobo is their offensive coordinator. There's continuity there. You expect Georgia to, once again, rightfully be the favorite to win the national championship, to three-peat for the first time, the nugget you dropped yesterday, since Minnesota in the 30s. So what are some of the more underrated offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator changes in the SEC? Well, Tennessee fans may be yelling at their radio. Alex Golesh out. He's the head coach at South Florida. Joey Halzle in, elevated from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. I don't know that this is going to show up on the radar, right, when you talk about the grand scheme of things in the SEC, because I think big picture, people look at that and they say, well, that's just Josh Heupel's offense. But Alex Golesh was calling the plays at Tennessee last year.
It took him some time, though, right? Didn't he eventually he was the offensive coordinator in name and then took over play calling in a second year under Heupel? Is that correct?
Exactly. Heupel called the plays at the outset. Golesh had to earn that trust after working under Heupel for several years. Halzle has worked under Heupel for several years, since Halzle was a player under Heupel at Oklahoma, where Joey Halzle played quarterback. So how long that takes for Joey Halzle to earn that trust that Alex Golesh did from Josh Heupel is something to monitor. But yes, it's the Tennessee Josh Heupel offense. They returned a lot on that side of the ball. And then in the F&M Bank chat, Tyler adds the other notable one, Bobby Petrino, and what happens at Texas A&M. Tyler says that is the most interesting to him.
Ooh. Of those three, Bama,
Georgia, and A&M,
I might agree with Tyler. Even though Georgia and Bama are likely going to have a bigger impact on, the college football playoff and all these different things. Jimbo and Bobby Petrino, the marriage of that after a 5-win A&M season, and already, we made jokes about Jimbo's. I'm sure it's not his last press conference that he gave, but a couple of months ago he gave a press conference where he was asked about Bobby Petrino taking over the offense, and kind of he wasn't direct about it.
He was like, we'll work through that as we go, and then he, a roundabout
left
way.
just enough door open to make you think Jimbo.
Yeah, and then he ended up saying, yeah, he'll call the plays. But it was almost like he was fighting this inner battle within himself of like, I really don't like this, but yeah, he'll call the plays. So yes, more hinges as far as the direction of the program, more hinges on Texas A&M's change. Absolutely. Bobby Petrino coming in. As far as just what the future of that program. If this doesn't work for Jimbo Fisher, he's toast at Texas A&M. He just is. If we see a repeat of 2022 at A&M with the offense floundering under Bobby Petrino, if there's infighting between he and Jimbo, then it is very, very hard to envision Jimbo Fisher lasting at Texas A&M despite that massive buyout. For Alabama, I think it's more about, okay, now the next challenge for Nick Saban. Can you continue to extend this dominance you've had at Alabama with this change at offensive coordinator? Specifically, I don't think there's a ton of concern about the defense under Kevin Steele. Nick Saban knows Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele's been the defensive coordinator at Alabama before. He's been around the block. But how is this going to work with Tommy Rees calling the plays, not knowing who the starting quarterback's going to be between Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe and Tyler Buckner? That's going to be fascinating to watch play out. But there's no question that when it comes to pressure on head coaches, Jimbo Fisher has all of it.
Do you know what his buyout is this year?
Oh, it's down to in the 80s.
Down to.
Right? And it's still in the 80s?
No. It's below $80 million.
Oh, it's in the 70s.
It's in the 70s now.
That's right. It's just ticking down.
So last year, to buy him out prior to January 1st, 2023, would have been $85.9 million. This year, to buy him out prior to January 1st, 2024, 76.8.
Wow.
67.5 the following, 58.2. I mean,
oh my goodness.
I mean, all the way down to January 1st, 2031 with a 9.95, which is still a bleep ton of money.
Texas A&M is so fascinating because they're that team that you look at as, well, that's the team that's the sleeping giant, right? Just because of the talent profile. But at the same time,
well, they keep dumping money into everything. You would think at some point,
you keep waiting for that to just happen, for that to click. You say, surely this cannot keep happening at Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher. If it happens again, I think he's gone. I think if they have a similar season,
76.8.
I think they're ponying up to $76 million. We have not talked a lot about what Kentucky has done in bringing back Liam Cohen, who obviously was there under coaching Will Levis, left to go work for the Rams. Rich Scangarello comes in. Levis's production drops off. The offense as a whole drops off. They go 6-6, and then Liam Cohen's back in the fold with Devin Leary, the transfer quarterback from NC State. I think there's a lot of optimism in Lexington right now about what this Kentucky offense can be with Liam Cohen back in the fold and one of the more exciting transfer quarterbacks in all of college football coming in there.
Well, he needs to stay healthy. That's the thing, right? Like it's been a bit of a nightmare for Devin Leary in his college career because he's had a ton of promise at NC State. Remember last year, heading into the college football season, how much optimism we talked about the ACC quarterbacks specifically with, and including Tyler Buckner at Notre Dame, given that they play an ACC schedule, and obviously those things didn't work out for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah,
but it hasn't clicked for Devin Leary. So it's a fascinating year in the SEC.
Now, here's the one program that we have not talked about at all in this regard. Arkansas, who for the first time in the Sam Pittman era have replaced both coordinators. Kendall Briles is out. He goes to TCU. Dan Enos is in, who was the offensive coordinator at Arkansas under Brett Bielema from 2015 to 2017. Most recently, Enos was at Maryland. He's been around. Defensive coordinator Barry Odom out. Now the head coach at UNLV. Marcus Woodson comes in. Sam Pittman is the epitome of a culture head coach, of the CEO, right? He's not micromanaging any certain position unless it's offensive line. He's not going to have a lot of influence on play calling on either side of the ball. He has been very vocal about that we have had success because of my staff, because he has compiled a fantastic staff in his time at Arkansas. Kendall Briles, one of the best young play callers in the country. Barry Odom was an SEC head coach not that long ago and had some success at Mizzou.
Yeah, Pittman is Orgeroning it.
Orgeroning it without the Cajun accent, yes. And probably a little less polarizing, I guess I would say.
Oh, I don't know. Sam Pittman's had a couple of headlines. I mean, you are correct. He is less polarizing than Ed O.
What is Sam Pittman's worst headline? Like chopping off Cade May's dad's finger at a Georgia recruiting event?
That's a pretty bad headline.
Which wasn't Sam Pittman's fault. It got caught in a chair. What are you going to do? But
no, you remember that line? It's not anything controversial, but he's had a couple of headlines. Whether it be the thing that he was tweeting something to do with recruiting after being ranked for the first time or ranked at a certain level for the first time, like within the top 10 maybe, or in the top 15.
Yes, right.
And he was getting some heat for that. Like, he's not controversial.
Oh, because he said something about, like, it's great we're in the top 10. Right. Sam Pittman, you can ask anybody. Like, if we had Dawn in here, I think, not to speak for her, Dawn would tell you, Sam Pittman is considered one of the good guys of this sport.
Mm-hmm.
Ed Orgeron, I don't know that everybody would say that about Ed Orgeron.
Oh, no, I know many people who would say not.
Right. It's the guy calling, like, Tennessee players after Lane Kiffin and his staff went to USC, telling them, don't go to class so you can come with us to USC.
Well, and he's a lot more tolerable now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's out of college football at this point, obviously, but like LSU Ed Orgeron, like going back to Miami Ed Orgeron, here's some problematic stuff around Ed Orgeron. Good God.
So Marcus Woodson has never been a defensive coordinator at the Power 5 level. He's been in the SEC, was the DB coach at Auburn in 2018 and 19. He was most recently the defensive backs coach at Florida State for the last 3 years. He's now calling plays on defense for Arkansas. Dan Enos, a very experienced play caller on the offensive side, returns KJ Jefferson at quarterback. I'm very intrigued at what happens at Arkansas this year if Sam Pittman, who has been the surprise of the last decade when it comes to head coaching hires in the SEC, it was an outside-of-the-box hire. That was a guy that was considered a career offensive line coach, one of, if not the best in the country at it. But that has worked out very well for Arkansas because of the staff he's been able to compile. How well can Pittman sustain that, replacing both coordinators? But a lot of changes in this league this year. I mean, Lane Kiffin brings in Pete Golding from Alabama to call plays on defense. Eli Drinkwitz was calling plays on offense for Mizzou. He makes a hire bringing in Kirby Moore. Florida brings in a defensive coordinator. So a lot hinging on, I mean, a guy like Billy Napier. There's a lot of, I don't care what you say, it's year 2. There's pressure on Billy Napier this year at Florida.
At a place like Florida,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and it's interesting, of the 13 coordinator changes that were made, 10 of them are on offense.
Right. So be an interesting year.
I love that the audacity of you to get in my ear and say, gotta run, when you're the one. I'm letting you have the runway here.
I'm done talking, so we have to go to break now.
You can't make me laugh that hard today. Every time I breathe out, it feels like I'm gasping for air. I don't know what's going on with my lung capacity, but it is severely diminished ahead of my Vegas trip. Speaking of which, I have an update on the Vegas group text. It is horrifying what has already happened. I will explain that to you. Coming up next, we will also get into the running back conundrum. We teased this topic yesterday. Chad Graff of The Athletic joined us to talk about a running back who is without pretty much precedent in the modern-day NFL, Derrick Henry. But there is a conundrum around the position group. We're going to get into that coming up next. All right, so we're going to get to this running back conundrum here in just a second, but we have been detailing my, shall I say, lack of enthusiasm about going to Las Vegas tomorrow. It's a bachelor party. We talked about it to open the show. The details of which, again, it's going to make me sound, spoiled, entitled to all of these things, because who doesn't want to take off work to go to Las Vegas? But the problem is, for those of you who weren't listening to the start of the show, I don't know these people. Like, I know the groom. And there's 14 other dudes on this trip that I do not know. I've been stuck in a group chat with these people for almost 6 months. They have not stopped talking about this Vegas trip. They are all very close friends. I am not close friends with any of them other than the groom. And that's all well and good. But my primary complaint about this, as a 1045 The Zone throwback, is the group text, because not only is the group text unending, not only do I not know any of these people in the group text, but the groom, but would you like to hear the latest update from the group text?
Sure.
Planes were boarded this morning by, let's say, half of the traveling party, all right?
Okay.
I got a text from a 270 area code. Again, a number that I do not know, a person that I do not know. All it says is some chick effing puked back here. And
So they're headed there.
I said, where? I said, on the plane. All I got back was a yes. There's vomit, not even in Vegas.
Just be happy you're not on that plane.
On the plane. I don't want anything to do. Just vomiting on a plane. Have you ever been on a plane where somebody's vomited?
Yes.
Have you actually?
On the flight back from L.A., from the Titans-Chargers game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think we talked about
this. A couple
this.
rows over. Yep. I was just minding my business watching my Nick Cage movie, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Great movie.
So good.
Have you ever puked on a plane?
Me? No.
As a child.
I feel like you should feel bad for those people because there's just jostling and everyone judges you. Everyone is looking back at who is making these god-awful, gnarly noises
So
back
you've
there.
puked on a plane?
Yeah, I puked on a plane.
Yeah.
When? How recently?
I
Last week in Vegas.
wasn't going to say that, but like 21, maybe 22. I don't know. But what happened was I got air sick. I got plane sick. It never happens to me. Never get motion sick. I couldn't remember where they tell you those bags are. They're like, oh, here's a bags underneath your seat or something.
Literally in front of you. The only place that there is to put those things.
Well, they all look gross. Would you use a barf bag?
No.
That's what I'm saying. You would go throw up in the toilet, which is what I try to do. But the problem with
you didn't make it?
No, the airplane bathrooms are just so tiny, dude. There's not enough way to traverse, so you end up like puking in a corner, and there's like it's not the best place to be. So if someone pukes on your plane, you should feel bad for them and not judge them. It's not their fault. Maybe it is.
It probably is.
No.
On a flight back from Vegas.
No, on a flight to Vegas. That's definitely a flight that's been pre-gamed.
That's a red flag. That's hanging out at the bar too much.
All right, here's what I'm going to say. And again, people are going to hate me for it, and that I don't care. I have the same level of sympathy for people who throw up on planes as I do for people with children on planes. It seems like an unrelenting nightmare. It's probably not your fault. But either way, I don't have sympathy for you.
You
it's
have
just
to
an
transport
inconvenience.
your kids somehow. Like, you cannot get mad at people for bringing... I understand there's nothing worse than a crying baby on a plane.
Nothing worse.
But like my parents were flying me as an infant over to different countries.
The first TWA flight I took was at 3 months old. They put me in a shoebox, an actual shoebox. My first international flight, flying from Egypt to back to the United States. A shoebox.
What's his name? Buck.
Nike.
Nike.
But it's not even the little kids that bother me. It's like the 10 to 16-year-olds who have no spatial awareness, who have no respect for the people around them. They're playing their iPads on max volume, even though they hand out headphones. Like, these kids will like lean on you, lay on you, pick their nose beside you. And that is what I do blame the parents for. That is poor parenting. Don't bring your badass kids on this flight and make me tell them to turn it around. Make me say, I want to shake his hand. Don't make me be that guy.
It's such a great reference by you. I don't know how many people in the audience get
I want to
it.
shake your hand.
I want to shake your hand.
That's
If you
the
know,
only,
you know.
There's two places I would fight a kid. One would be a ball pit because there would be no evidence. You would never be able to tell that I smothered a child in a ball pit. And then also on a plane, because that is the place I am at my irkiest. You stand up as soon as the plane lands. I'm going to fight you. You bring a kid on that's 12 with a loud-ass iPad, I'm going to fight you. And if you order a cocktail, like a convoluted drink at the front of the drink line, I will fight you. Do not hold that drink card up. I am thirsty as hell. I need my Sprite.
I think this is as much as you and I have ever agreed in our lives.
Fighting children on planes.
Surrounding the fighting of children on airplanes.
I wish kids ran their mouth a little bit more around me. I've been begging a little kid to try to step to me for a long time. I'm the wrong one, kids.
It sounds like people who torment animals and turn out to be serial killers.
No. I was just picked on as a kid.
He's like, I wish you would.
Yeah, what'd you say over there? I got a big belly? Your mama had a big belly.
They just want to rub it for good luck. That's all.
I feel like you get in trouble for things like that.
Yeah.
Officer, he was allowing my son to rub his belly. Straight to jail. Put that man in the back of that car.
Yeah, I think that's a worthy reason to send you straight to jail. Bert, what words of wisdom would you offer me before I make this journey tomorrow on a trip that the more that we talk about this, I've honestly been like okay about it. Until today.
I'm dreading it for you.
I don't want to go.
Just because you don't know anybody on the trip.
I simply do not want to go, and I love this man that's getting married, and I want him and his wife, who I'm also great friends with, to have an incredibly happy and wonderful and long and productive marriage, and to beat the odds in this country where more than half of us are getting divorced. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials. I want them to be happy as all hell, but I do not want to go on this bachelor party.
Where are you staying at? New Vegas, Old Vegas?
I am in New Vegas.
Okay, New Vegas.
New Vegas on the Strip.
You can't hide money. That's where the money's going to be. So my advice to you would be don't do it. If you have to think about it or you're like, should I do this? Don't do it. Put the money on black. Don't do it.
Got to be all in.
If you think it and you're like, I'm going to do this, do it. But if you have to convince yourself to place a $250 bet on black and the Golden Nugget at 2:30 in the morning, I'm not saying this happened to me, and I lost money, don't do it. Only if you're all the way in.
I'm not going to Old Vegas. I've been to Old Vegas. I'm good.
Old Vegas is where you find the best people to people watch.
No,
the people that are going to drop their wallet multiple times in the night and hope good Samaritans return it to them. Old Vegas is the place to go if you like watching people who have never been out of their hometown in their entire life. And now they're in Old Vegas with a video board as a ceiling.
No, because the people that you find in Old Vegas are the people that, you.
Me, kicking someone in the groin for $20.
The Burks of the world.
Paying $20 to kick somebody in the groin only to have the dissatisfaction of he's wearing a cup. I don't get to make foot to genitals direct contact. Phrasing. I don't want to deal with the people who are getting paid $20 to get kicked in the groin. I don't want to deal with the people who are paying $20 to kick somebody in the groin. I don't want any of that.
Sorry, how many people are on this trip?
15.
Oh, bail.
Woof.
Bail.
Yeah, they're never going to know you're there.
They don't need you there. There's no reason for you to be there.
Go to a museum.
They're going to have just as good of a time.
No, in fact, I think they'd have a better time without me.
Because there's not this one guy that's like, we got to bring this guy along.
They're all talking about how drunk they want to get. I'm just like, man, just let me go to the pool.
Can I get a water?
Can I get... let me read my book by the pool. I don't want to go.
It's a good place to be for a pool, man. It's going to be hot as hell. But also, you've got to treat those street performers like you do those people in Target and Walmart that are trying to sign you up for a new cell phone plan.
Oh, my God. I had an exchange with them the other day. They walked up to me and said, sir, how much are you paying for cable and internet? I said, I don't.
All the respect in the world of those people because you got to hustle on that job. Yeah. But I treat them like a fly on a poo, man. I just keep on going. I'm not swatting. I'm not shooing. I'm just keeping going. You got to do the same thing for
Why
those.
does it always come back to fecal matter with you?
Fort in the F&M Bank chat says, send Bert in your place.
Oh, my gosh.
You just went.
I would go back.
He could be your stand-in.
I would super glue a facial hair pattern similar to yours on, go in there with a nice cut, and then ruin your reputation with these people. How long has it been since you've seen them? Is this plausible?
He doesn't know these people.
You don't know. How did you get invited to a wedding?
He only knows the groom.
No, but here's the problem. Here's the only, and you can find me if you want to, but like, they all know me. They're Titans fans. So like, there is a degree of excitement that Drew, the groom, has invited me on this trip because you know what they're going to spend the day and a half that I'm in Vegas talking to me about?
Grilling you about D-Hop.
Will Levis. and I'll want to slit my wrists.
Yeah, but you're on radio, man. So many times do people have eloquent voices on radio, and then you see them and they're a derp. They just look like a beanbag chair.
Do you know how often I get that? Oh, I didn't think you'd look like that.
Yeah, right. Well, like that, I'm telling you, it always happens. When I worked in country music as a younger radio professional, I used to have this woman always call me and say like, "Oh, you did such a good job previewing that song," and she would always call me up. She sounded like a perfectly fine lady, so I decided to meet her. Beanbag chair. You got to watch out. Radio people are not the people.
Beanbag chair.
Beanbag chair.
Oh, my God. We were supposed to talk about something sports-related here, and, of course, we did not.
Story of our life.
Shameful. 615-737-1045. We'll talk about this running back conundrum. Meanwhile, Bert will go to the shadows.
Not again.
And we'll talk about sports coming up next. So the conundrum for running backs is a complicated one. We just spent a good segment with Chad Graff and the... Damn it!
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
What is it now?
Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic with news about half an hour ago that former LSU basketball coach Will Wade will receive a 2-year show cause, among other penalties. Adding to that, Brody Miller, also of The Athletic, covers the LSU Tigers, says that LSU men's basketball and football has been put on a 3-year probation by the NCAA.
Okay, that was a worthwhile interruption. Well done by you. So, as he mentioned, both Nicole Auerbach and Brody Miller reporting men's basketball and football programs on that 3-year probation. So Will Wade, who is the root of all evil, really, for this, he's just been hired by McNeese State
Yes.
to coach their basketball program.
And I believe he was even suspended for the first handful of games.
Now, Will Wade has been out of the game for a couple of years now. Between LSU, I know that he lasted longer at LSU than he probably should have, given that there was an FBI probe
Yes, I would say so.
going on with what was the quote, strong-ass offer.
Yes.
Before such things could exist. Today, Will Wade, not problematic whatsoever, really. But, so that's where the basketball probation comes from. Will Wade gets a 2-year show cause, so McNeese State now without a basketball coach again. No postseason bans, as Lucas said, Brody Miller is reporting. Financial penalties, though. LSU's decision to fire Will Wade, when it did, helped LSU avoid further penalties. So what is football's infraction here? Because I've not seen that detailed. On3 is also reporting the same thing, but in the On3 article, there's no details on why LSU football is receiving a 3-year probation, but many details about why the basketball program is.
Yeah, the basketball program's violations have been much more publicized. Brody Miller continues on Twitter of The Athletic saying that the football team will receive some financial penalties. No postseason ban, according to Brody. Now, here's what Nicole Auerbach is saying on Will Wade's 2-year show cause. He will have a 10-game suspension this fall at McNeese State. So he can continue to coach McNeese State after the 10-game suspension, but until June 2025, no off-campus recruiting-related activities during any applicable April or summer evaluation or contact period. McNeese State suffers a reduction in official visits by 4 each during the 2023-24 and 2024-25 academic years. No recruiting conversations for Will Wade between September of this year and October of this year, and September of next year and October of next year, and no unofficial visits for Will Wade in those same time frames, and suspended for the first 10 games of the season for McNeese State, assuming McNeese State continues to employ a head coach that basically can't recruit for 2 years.
Damn. I want to know what's being reported around the football team. I know everything there. I mean, not everything there is to know. Did you ever watch that HBO special on the basketball FBI probe?
Yes.
It was a fascinating, and I think 3HL had the guy who ended up getting saddled with the jail time.
Yeah.
With it, I can't remember the individual's name. I think Slay had a relationship with him, if I remember correctly, which is how that came to be, that interview. But forgive me, I don't remember all the details. Perhaps 3HL could shed some more light on this later on. I'm sure they will. But I want to know the details around the football program, because if this is being linked to Will Wade, then unless something significant has happened under Brian Kelly in the last couple of months, this is Ed Orgeron related.
Yes, 2020, 2021 violations under Ed Orgeron. It appears to be a slap on the wrist when it comes to really both football and basketball. You're talking about probation, some financial penalties, no postseason bans, doesn't look like any scholarship reductions. Will Wade is getting the brunt of this. McNeese State is getting the brunt of this, but that's probably what you get when you fire a head coach with the past of Will Wade, when this could come down at any moment.
So I remember there being a situation around Darius Geis, because LSU, back on April 24th, 2021, LSU plans to ban Darius Geis indefinitely, remove his name from their record books. So LSU reportedly back in April of 2021 reportedly went through that process, banning Geis, who played there from 2015 to 2017. Heather Dinnish reported the decision comes after two women said Darius Geis sexually assaulted them in 2016, while a third woman said he took a partially nude photo of her without her consent and shared it with his football teammates. Now, 15 to 17 is not Orgeron.
Orgeron was there for 2017.
So I don't want to draw any unfair connections between the Geis situation because if I remember correctly,
And Orgeron was on that staff. He was working under
he
Les
was
Miles.
on that staff.
2015. In 2016, he took over as the interim for Miles. And then 2017, he was the permanent coach.
So I can't remember if there was a degree of cover-up or a mishandling of the Darius Geis situation where the football staff was informed but didn't take the proper action. I don't want to be reckless with the details on that because it was several years ago, and I don't have all of the resources in front of me to be able to give you an accurate assessment of that. But I'm fascinated to see what comes out about the football program. This is, as Lucas said, more of a slap on the wrist than anything because it's not going to cost them the opportunity, a shot at a playoff, which would have meant at that point, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that would have been 3 straight years for LSU without making the playoff, which would have been hugely detrimental to that program and to that fan base. Even if, it had nothing to do with Brian Kelly. Like, that would have gone really, really poorly in Baton Rouge.
The F&M Bank chat is coming in hot with all the show causes handed out to Tennessee coaches for far less with Bruce Pearl.
Yeah.
3 years for
Donnie
a cookout.
Tyndall.
Donnie Tyndall, 10 years for academic violations at Southern Miss.
Well, speaking of academic violations, or speaking of violations,
UNC
just generally, UNC got away with so much. Hell, Penny Hardaway. Now, Penny's situation is not, I don't think that Penny's situation is academic related necessarily.
No, suspended 3 games for the start of this season.
Penny got a 3-game suspension. He was a part of the FBI probe. So, who is determining this? This is an NCAA decision, yeah? This is not an LSU decision.
Right. Well, LSU did self-impose some penalties.
By way of trying to mitigate whatever the NCAA would ultimately hand down. So
They fired Wade after some time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Took them a while.
LSU won a regular season basketball title under Will Wade in the midst of all of that. So they're not going to revoke that. It doesn't appear. But yeah, it is insane to put that into perspective that a guy like Donnie Tyndall, I mean, you're talking about, in my personal opinion, anybody can come to me with something worse. I have never seen a more severe penalty for a singular head coach from the NCAA than what Donnie Tyndall got for academic violations when he was at Southern Miss. I mean, you're talking about a decade, which essentially, it puts you out of the college game. I mean, Donnie Tyndall has been in the G League.
Yeah, I think so.
He is currently at Chipola College, a public college in Marianna, Florida, part of the Florida college system.
God almighty.
I mean, not an NCAA institution. It torpedoed his career.
I mean, Donnie Tyndall was still, when I first got here, Donnie Tyndall was still appearing on Nashville sports radio, not crying's the wrong word, but declaring the unfairness of his situation compared to a lot of other similar scenarios that have happened at other institutions. I don't know what happened there with Donnie Tyndall that ultimately saw 10 years is outrageous.
Crazy.
Outrageous. Justin in Germantown says OBJ was handing out cash in the locker room after the 2020 championship game. I forgot about that.
But
now that's okay.
Nothing is better than bringing up the UNC
is bad.
Academic scandal, where essentially nothing happened out of that.
Didn't Bert send something to do with that to the group today? It looks like it's a clip from John Oliver.
Yeah, John Oliver. It's good.
Check it. Is it FCC safe?
It is far from it. Okay. We're not playing it.
Okay. So I assume this is not his Comedy Central show. This is his HBO show.
Yes.
Okay. Last week tonight. Honestly, do you ever watch that? I know you don't watch news, and that's hardly news, but Last Week Tonight with John Oliver on HBO is one of the funniest. And honestly, I do learn a great deal of what's going on in current events from that show.
Austin Stanley of A to Z Sports has texted me, said, Google David Bliss of Baylor, who was given a 10-year show cause in 2005, Baylor basketball coach.
Oh, well, isn't that didn't they cover up a murder? Isn't that what happened with Dave Bliss? I'm pretty sure that was under him. Is it Baylor or Oregon that I'm thinking of? I can't remember.
No, that happened at Baylor.
That happened at Baylor.
What you're thinking of, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Dave Bliss was, again, reckless speculation here, because if that's not Dave Bliss, then I feel terrible. But I'm pretty sure that was under the watch of Dave Bliss, if memory serves.
There was a lot that happened under Dave Bliss at Baylor. But yes, a 10-year show cause.
Again, the murder would probably supersede anything else that's going on there. Would you not agree?
Improper financial aid and academic stuff
One would
at
think
Southern Miss.
that the cover-up... Anyway, do you want to say anything about the NBA draft tonight before we move on? We haven't done anything around it. We know that Ben Shepherd of Belmont.
Yeah, two local prospects.
Ben Shepherd and Brandon Miller. Oh, can we play that? Let this be the only portion of NBA draft coverage that we do. Brandon Miller, the Alabama stud forward, he's been interviewed for the pre-draft process yesterday. Or this might not have been yesterday, but it's a clip that was posted on Twitter yesterday. And of course, as is the custom in our sports talk society, every basketball player ever, no matter how far removed we are from Michael Jordan, must be asked about the GOAT conversation, greatest of all time between Jordan and LeBron. Brandon Miller gave one of the most inexplicable answers I've ever heard. It's the only time I found that question relevant in the last 10 years. Let me hear who Brandon Miller's GOAT of basketball is.
As a young person, do you feel like that conversation is just overdone?
No, because I actually don't think LeBron is, the GOAT of basketball. I think my GOAT of basketball is Paul George. I always grew up watching him, so it's never just LeBron.
That's it.
Okay, the clip goes on, and the interviewer acts like nothing has just happened. This man said with a straight face, not even Michael, not even LeBron, Paul George.
I feel like he's just saying that Paul George was his favorite player growing up.
I don't care.
And the guy he emulated his game after.
Lucas, the sentence was Paul George was my GOAT.
I think he's just saying Paul George was his favorite player.
I understand. Then somebody needs to tell Brandon Miller what the hell GOAT means, okay? I'm assuming that he knows. Maybe it's not a safe assumption. As a Pacers fan, my jaw dropped to the floor. And I saw the best of Paul George going in college. We used to pay $15 to go up to Indianapolis to watch some of the Eastern Conference Finals games between LeBron, Wade, Bosch, and those Heat teams, and Paul George, Lance Stevenson blowing in LeBron's ear, and Roy Hibbert. And that was the best version of Paul George that I ever saw. GOAT of basketball, nonsense. God help you, Brandon Miller, and good luck in your NBA career. The difference between DeAndre Hopkins and every other 30-plus-year-old wide receiver that the Titans have ever signed. Greg Cosell is going to make the best case that you've heard for that coming up next.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. College baseball, Florida advanced to the National Championship Series with a 3-2 win over TCU on Wednesday. They will await the winner between Wake Forest and LSU, who will play again tonight at 6 p.m. LSU beat the Demon Deacons 5-2 on Wednesday to stay alive and force that second game. Tonight, the NBA draft begins at 7 p.m. in New York. The San Antonio Spurs hold the first overall pick, expected to be Victor Wembanyama. Two local prospects that could get drafted in the first round, Ben Shepherd out of Belmont and former Cane Ridge and Alabama star Brendan Miller. News in the world of college football and basketball with the LSU Tigers. According to Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic, as well as Brody Miller of The Athletic, LSU men's basketball and football will be on probation for 3 years for NCAA violations, and former LSU basketball coach, current McNeese State head coach Will Wade, receives a 2-year show cause. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour of the show. Welcome in, welcome back. We're happy to have you. One more hour for me, anyway, and then tomorrow, it's the Lucas Panzica show. I'm on a flight to Vegas tomorrow for a bachelor party that I have mixed emotions about, shall we say.
You're dreading it.
Our buddy Buckethead, longtime Loyal Zone listener, texted me and said, wait, are any of these dudes listening to the show right now? And I said, which dudes? He said, in this bachelor party that you're currently
it's dragging,
pooping all over. Well, can't use the other word. But
it's a fair point. I mean, you might not come to a warm welcome.
That's fine because I'm only there for a day and a half. But I will say the group text has been miraculously, pleasantly silent since I've aired my grievances on a public platform. So if it's working, good. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in if you want to. Let us get into a discussion about DeAndre Hopkins and the biggest argument that I hear from Titans fans against signing him. Can anybody in the class, I don't know if there's more than one of you back there at any given point, anybody in the class tell me what the biggest argument by Titans fans against the signing of DeAndre Hopkins is?
Julio!
Among many, yes. Randy Moss, Andre Johnson, Julio Jones. Wide receivers in their 30s, great wide receivers in their careers, who came to the Titans at the end of their careers and were subsequently varying degrees of awful. From Randy's the worst, right? Randy as a Titan is the worst on that scale.
Like he offered the least.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as production,
like
100%.
Of the things that have left Titans fans scarred the most, Randy Moss as a Titan, of the three of those, is probably the biggest one, yeah? Because Randy still played for a Super Bowl after he left Tennessee. He went to San Francisco.
Right. Now, he was considered in the twilight of his career.
Oh, yeah.
When he came to Nashville. He wasn't that old. How old was he when he came to the Titans?
I think he was, if he was 31 in New England, I think he would have been 33?
Right. So he was considered at the tail end there, but certainly he did not put out, hardly anything.
No.
Andre Johnson at least had one game, big game-winning touchdown catch.
Detroit?
Yes.
He almost had a second one, actually, ironically enough, against Detroit at home. I think that was the first Titans game that I covered. No. First Titans game that I covered was Titans-Raiders, Marshawn Lynch's first game with the Raiders.
Can you tell me Randy Moss's stats as a Tennessee Titan?
It was just the one season, yeah?
It was just 2010, just part of 2010.
Right.
He played in 8 games. He had...
So wait.
Go ahead.
8 games.
How many catches?
15.
How many yards?
220.
6 for 80.
Oh.
In 8 games.
God.
No touchdowns.
All right, so worse than I thought. So on a scale of... I guess Andre Johnson paid off the most for them. So on a scale of Randy to Andre, Julio in the middle, where would you rank the DeAndre Hopkins signing? The answer is he's not the same as any of them. And there's one big distinctive reason why. DeAndre Hopkins, describing his game, it's almost like when you hear some of the I don't want to say racially charged, but there does tend to be a racial component around, say, describing what was the name of the white quarterback this year in the NFL draft?
Oh, out of Iowa.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to kill me.
Anyway, like describing a white athlete as sneaky athletic or deceptively fast, right? I would use all of those same terms to describe. Riley Moss.
Speaking of Riley Moss, Randy Moss. By the way, Julio was far more productive than Andre Johnson.
Than either of them, yes.
For what it's worth.
And Julio, by the way, should have had more touchdowns than he ultimately got credit for. He only had the one.
He should have had two.
He should have had two. Certainly Seattle.
I mean, he ended up with, like almost the same amount of yards as Robert Woods or Traylon Burks last year.
Think about that. For as badly as you think the Julio Jones experiment went.
Okay, never mind. I thought, no, yeah, that's right. He had 434 yards on 31 catches.
And Woods had just over 500. And that's in all 17 games. Oh, God. Think about that. That's in all 17 games for Robert.
Julio played 10.
Should we include Robert Woods in this equation? Because, woof. I mean, Robert Woods is not regarded in the same, stratosphere as those three players. I think all three are Hall of Famers whenever their time comes. Robert Woods is not that, but, Robert Woods is still a very productive, across many years, wide receiver, both in Buffalo and in L.A. So let's add Robert Woods to this equation. None of those things is like DeAndre Hopkins. I want you to listen to Greg Cosell. So it's the first podcast that we've done since the live show. It's back and available in your feeds for those of you who are loyal subscribers to the install. We're grateful for you. I asked Greg yesterday about DeAndre Hopkins' game, and this was the analysis that Greg Cosell gave. DeAndre Hopkins, at this point of his career, what do you see when you watch him on tape in that Arizona offense, understanding that his PED suspension cost him some time, but when he got back out on the field, he still found ways to be hugely productive?
Without question. I mean, he missed the first 6 games, and I think he caught close to 75 balls. I mean, don't forget, his game is not built on vertical speed. He is not a burner. Anytime he gets vertical, it's for reasons other than pure speed. And I think that he is as refined and subtle a route runner as there is in the game. I think that his ability to create just enough separation at the top of his route stem is really, really high level. We know he has great, great hands. DeAndre Hopkins reminds me of a conversation I had years ago when I interviewed Chris Carter. And I remember I asked Chris Carter about his off-season routine. And he said to me, I try to work on the things that I'm not good at. So the thing I don't work on is catching the ball, because I'm really good at that. And he was right. I mean, the way he said it, it came across, in sort of an egotistical way. But of course, great players in every sport are egotistical to a certain extent. They have to be. That's just the nature of performing at a high level. But I'll never forget Chris Carter saying that. And DeAndre Hopkins is the same. DeAndre Hopkins has great, great hands. He catches everything. He creates just enough separation. He's deceptive run after catch. In other words, you don't see him catch it and you go, wow, look at the juice that this guy has. But he's got this deceptive ability to kind of make people miss in a short space. And he's physical and he's competitive. And obviously he'd be the kind of guy that could help a wide receiver room. He could help a quarterback, whether it's a veteran like Ryan Tannehill or a young quarterback like Will Levis. He has that understanding of the game. He's still a really productive receiver. That's what you're looking for. We can debate styles of play. That's a different question. I mean, obviously, like I said, he's not just going to run by corners, but, he's a productive wide receiver who knows how to get open, knows how to run routes, can line up outside, can line up inside, understands how different receiver splits impact the way you run routes. He's just a really professional, detailed receiver.
So that's Greg Cosell. We basically did the whole episode yesterday about DeAndre Hopkins, his fit with the Titans, his fit with the Patriots, what makes the most sense, his playing style. And I think that's the biggest thing that differentiates Hopkins versus the other 3 or 4, however many of them you want to count, wide receivers in their 30s that the Titans have signed who have been productive elsewhere but weren't here. His game is going to age better. His game already is aging better. He's not Julio Jones. All right, Lucas, you went out to a number of practices with me while Julio was still on the team. Did you ever just stop and watch him during drills?
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember when he first got here at OTAs?
Yeah.
The way people were marveling?
Well, because
he high-pointed one ball, and it's like, whoa. It's like what's the Toy Story? The little aliens in Toy Story? All the little green aliens looking up like, whoa.
I have been chosen.
Yeah, that was all of Titans fans and media marveling at Julio Jones high-pointing a football with no pads on.
But not just the high-pointing. The footwork, the speed, the velocity of how fast his feet move for a man that size. He was bigger, faster, stronger than anybody that they had out on the field, including A.J. Brown. The thing was, so Julio can still do the things that make Julio Jones great, right? Except he's got the hamstrings of a 33-year-old or 32-year-old at the time. After so many years of hard starts and stops, running routes at that size, the whole fascination with Julio is he runs routes with the precision of a player who should not be the size that Julio Jones is. That they call it a flare route that he used to run in Atlanta. That quick out route that he'd run, just put the defender in an absolute spin cycle and then cut away, be wide open on the sideline. Julio Jones perfected that. The problem is he can still do that. His hamstrings can't. DeAndre Hopkins, his body is fine. Yeah, I know he had 2021, he had, it was his least productive season as a pro, and it was marred by injury. I think there was a hammy involved in there too. Last year, missed 6 games, was as productive as any wide receiver in the sport.
6 games due to suspension.
PEDs, yes.
Right, not injury.
So he is still a great football player. Whether he's regarded as the best at his position anymore, no, of course not. But this production in your passing game, you are not at liberty to discriminate against a wide receiver in his 30s if he's still a productive player. That's what DeAndre Hopkins offers you. That's why the pursuit of him by your football team has been substantial. That's why Bill Belichick wants him as well. 615-737-1045. We'll get your feedback on that, take some phone calls. We'll also talk about Ran Carthon in his first offseason. Without having seen this team play a game, I understand that's hard, but how would you evaluate the way that he addressed the Titans' needs in his first offseason? We'll talk about that coming up next. Welcome back to the show. So we talked about DeAndre Hopkins. We talked about the idea that, in theory, this man's game should age a little better than the other veteran wide receivers that the Titans have acquired in years past. But within the context of your first-year general manager, what have you made of the offseason that he's had, his first with this team? And how much would that change your perspective of his offseason to date? How much would that change if he were to land DeAndre Hopkins by the time we get to training camp? Probably. I'm assuming that DeAndre Hopkins, and this is just me making an educated guess. I'm assuming DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be under contract somewhere until like a couple days into training camp for most teams. Like, I even think that it might take a week or so into training camp. One, because he doesn't want to practice. It doesn't sound like he's going to practice anyway, regardless of where he lands. Arizona hasn't been making him. But I wonder, or that's just basically where I'm at with it right now. How many injuries is it going to take, and how long is he willing to wait out those injuries for another team to come sniffing around and say, hey, bud, we really need you. We've had this terrible, terrible injury that's occurred during training camp. We need another wide receiver. Come get it.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems likely. Or it seems unlikely that he is with someone before the first day of training camp.
I would be shocked. Now, of course, these things can always change, but let's keep it within the context of your general manager at this point. Now, when I say that, Joe Rexrode and I were having this conversation yesterday. We did speaking of podcasts, we did all 4 of the shows yesterday that I'm responsible for hosting. Did the 615 with Joe Rexrode, did the install with Greg Cosell, did the radio show, and, of course, primetime last night. So, Rex and I, after Greg and I wrapped up, we were talking about, Rexrode brought up that it feels different when you're talking about personnel moves that the Titans make. Did it not feel like when you talked about personnel moves that you were almost exclusively talking about those within the context of John Robinson?
He was the one making those decisions.
Does it feel like Ran Carthon, any conversation around their personnel decisions is exclusively about Ran?
It probably shouldn't be.
It definitely is not.
With their messaging.
I don't think of now. Let me say this, and don't take this the wrong way. But I don't think of Ran Carthon and John Robinson as having the same exact jobs. I think John Robinson was far more, even though he had a staff, he worked with Vrabel, they talk every day, blah, 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 whatever. Even though I know towards the end, that was a far less inclusive process, which is why you see that phrase in every statement made by the Titans prior to and after the hiring of Ran Carthon, collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. It was a less inclusive process with John towards the end. But I think John, as an entity, was more independent, far more independent from Vrabel than I think of Ran being. There are certain responsibilities that still fall under the job of GM. But I don't think that Ran and John have exactly the same jobs with the same organization. Even the front office structure. Think about that. The number of assistant general managers, 2 so far, Anthony Robinson and Chad Brinker, that they've brought in. I don't want to call it an outright deference, but I don't think deference is too strong a word of Ran Carthon to Mike Vrabel when it comes to personnel decision-making. It allows Mike the ability to influence personnel. It doesn't sound, and I don't know what Mike's contract looks like, so I don't know whether he has final personnel say or not, the way that some head coaches do. Kyle Shanahan, for example. But Vrabel gets less heat and also less credit for the personnel decisions that are being made right now because of this kind of protection, for lack of a better word, that Ran offers him. It's not to say that it's not equally as important a job under Ran Carthon as it was under John Robinson. But I do think that the job is being done in a much different way. Now, the results of that remain to be seen. How have you felt about, one, the offseason that Ran has had, everything from asking Byard to take a pay cut to getting Jeff Simmons under contract to putting together the draft class that he did and everything that they've done around the quarterback situation and wide receivers or lack thereof? All of it, on the whole. How would you assess the job that Ran Carthon did in addressing your needs as a football team. There's a difference between addressing the need and the moves having worked out. Of course, we won't know that. I've told you this multiple times. I don't know what your football team's going to be until probably mid-October. By the time we get to the Ravens game, I should have a pretty good idea of what your football team is, both in terms of the offense that they're going to run, what the personnel moves that they've made, how they've worked or not worked, all these different things. It takes about a month of football. And certainly I'm not going to make any grand assessments off week one. Week one is the weirdest week of any week in the NFL regular season. We can't even really make assessments as to the offensive line just yet because to this point they haven't put on pads.
To be honest, that's my honest reaction to all of this is that. What you said about the offensive line, but for the entire big picture, is that it's almost impossible to do this.
It's not in the same way. So let's run it through a similar conversation that we had. Tennessee baseball season ended yesterday. And we had the conversation of was it a success or not? This is a different version of that. Of the needs, of the moves that had to be made, of the needs that needed to be addressed, how did the general manager do at addressing those needs? Again, results will wait, and then we'll have that conversation then. But addressing the needs, how did he do? Let's go down the list. Let's take it by position. Quarterback. Theoretically, you got your quarterback of the future. You've not done anything with Ryan Tannehill's contract, so it gives you the flexibility. You still have a starting quarterback in place that's not disputed. He's been steadfast in his support of Ryan Tannehill the entire time. I would say that the way that they've addressed the quarterback situation this offseason is adequate. Running back. Rumors around Derrick Henry, the credibility of which very much in question, in fact, outright denied by the general manager. The trades, potential for trades, potential for movement of Derrick. Added the running back in the third round, who they're saying is a 3-down running back and also can contribute in more meaningful ways in your passing game. Derrick Henry's only got 1 year on his contract. You haven't had to mess with Derrick's money. They've got adequate depth there with Hassan Haskins. You would say that the running back position has been addressed adequately. Then we get to wide receiver. Nobody is happy with the wide receiver situation. They may be happy with the wide receiver situation. Their actions would indicate, including the pursuit of DeAndre Hopkins, that they think they could use a little more, but that largely, draft and free agency, they were set. I don't think, until you can say incomplete for now, that's the biggest incomplete grade that you can give.
Wide receiver.
Wide receiver. Because while they are still very much in pursuit of this guy, their wide receiver room is not yet complete. The conversation around the wide receivers will be drastically different if they do land him than if they don't. So we'll say incomplete, though to this point, unsatisfactory with the wide receiver, though you are encouraged by them meaningfully chasing DeAndre Hopkins. Offensive line, whether it works out, I have no idea. They may not be much better than they were last year, but did they address it? Yes, that's almost an entirely new, everything but the left tackle, and a player who started for them last year in a new position. 4 new players on the offensive line, 4 different players in different spots on the offensive line, and your right tackle, the only returning starter in his spot, is only in his second year. The need was addressed. The moves, we'll see. But the need itself was addressed. He gets a pass for that. They got Jeff Simmons under contract. Satisfactory by any stretch of the imagination. They awkwardly asked Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. Kevin Byard is still a Titan. That conversation might have been unpleasant, but they do still have their all-pro safety on this team. Secondary, they feel about their corner depth the same the way that we all do, which is not great. Sean Murphy-Bunting comes in. He looks like he's going to be a starting outside corner for them. We'll see how things go in training camp. I would say that need was addressed. Defensive line depth and edge depth. I like the Arden Key move. I do not like what's behind either of those positions. I feel very, very uncertain about the strength of the depth on that front 7. And I don't know enough about the linebackers that they've added other than they like the potential of Alshire in a more substantive role when you've seen a lot of good snaps from him in a reserve role. So I'd say on the whole, general manager addressed the things that he needed to address. absent the wide receiver, but they're currently trying. Is trying enough for you? I can't answer that question. But I would say, on the whole, without seeing the results yet, I am satisfied with the job that Ran Carthon has done, if I am a Titans fan. But I won't speak for you. Let you guys speak for yourself. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Jonah Reels on the F&M Bank chat says, Caleb Murphy and Rashad Weaver. Don't worry about defensive line. Well, those are edge guys. And Caleb Murphy's an undrafted rookie free agent. Hugely productive undrafted rookie free agent.
Ferris State.
Yep. Something outrageous, like 22 and a half or 25 sacks last year. Weaver is a depth player. And now, Weaver is a fine depth player. Weaver played a lot of snaps last year. Based on what I saw from Rashad Weaver last year, that's not a great player. He's a fine player. He's a functional player. He has a role. But that doesn't mean I got to feel great about the depth. Jason in Nashville is next. Hey, Jason.
So my opinion on it is, with the cards that I feel like that Ran was dealt, I feel like he did the best he could. I mean, looking at the players, like one of the offensive linemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but came from the Niners, and I believe he played every game he's played with them. He was healthy, reliable for them. And then, I'm just looking at them. There are no splash names, but does splash names always mean you were successful? No. So, no one expected the Titans to turn it around in 1 year, and then, with the way it was left, it was heading down. And then there were so many people talking about rebuild. So as far as what I see right now, you're only a couple of pieces away of getting it back to some kind of decent team. So that's just my opinion. Y'all have a blessed day, but
thanks for the call, Jason.
In 40 years, Daniel Brunskill, the guard he's referring to from San Francisco, 4 years in his career with the 49ers, he has played in 61 games, started 42.
And he's a swing player, so he can play. He's played all 5 positions.
Yes.
Here he will be the right guard until such time, if such time occurs that they, don't see him fit to play right guard anymore. And that's possible. Jonah in the F&M Bank chat also says, you've got to look at the horrible cap situation that he inherited. It was bad, very bad. They had very limited resources to address all these needs. They did as much as they could with the money that they had. Bruce says, you got to give Ran at least 3 years to build his team the way that he wants it. This is Ran's team, but the structure of the team has still been built on John Robinson's draft picks. You don't get 3 years. I'm sorry. You don't. John Robinson he was in the middle of 7 consecutive winning seasons. He got fired in the middle of it. You don't get 3 years before you get evaluated. You're not going to get Bruce. I bet you money that you don't give him 3 years by the end of the day. Because it's like coaches, it's like quarterbacks, general managers. There is so much scrutiny, so much coverage, so many opinions flying around on the internet. You don't get 3 years.
We're even past that point in college football, I think, with head coaches.
Oh, my God. If anything, it's worse in college because of a name, image, and likeness,
and
because of transfer portal. It has become, in ways that you talk to. Now, I don't talk to a ton of college coaches. I mostly work in the NFL, but I'll talk to a lot. I do primarily work in the NFL. I'll talk to a lot of NFL coaches who have spent time in the ranks of college. They'll say that they talk to people who find it completely untenable. And they said, I don't know if this is the path that I would choose to go down if I entered into the college game now, with the state of the college game now, what it is to be a coach, because of how hard it is to sustain, to keep your job, to keep the pressure off you.
And we just talked about it with Billy Napier going into year 2 with that pressure. Think about Brian Harsin at Auburn, the way that flipped on him in less than 2 years. Yeah, we're past the point of give him time to build. But if the Titans signed DeAndre Hopkins, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Titans fan not satisfied with the job Ran Carthon did in the offseason, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could walk down, probably Broadway wouldn't be the best place because I don't know how many Titans fans are walking around Broadway, but go take a walk somewhere. I don't know, name a street in Nashville, Nolensville Pike, pull 100 people, and I bet 90 of them would say, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Did as much as he possibly could have if DeAndre Hopkins were to come to Nashville.
Yes, at that point. Chris is in White House up next. Hey, Chris.
Buck, Lucas, how we doing today?
Great.
Hey, I think he did a great job. I also think the elephant in the room for every Titans fan is if this team could play a season where the injuries were middle of the road and there wasn't so many holes to fill and so much depth to worry about, and you just got normal production out of the players that are supposed to be on the field. Same thing for wide receivers. You don't need elite production. Just get average expected production out of the wide receivers and watch what happens with the running game and the offense and the quarterback. And I think that's what most Titans fans look at and expect from this team, is not just the general manager to fill holes, but that we can stay healthy on the field. And that would make all the difference in the world. And before I go, this is my first time to call in. There was a certain contest here in town a couple of years ago. Lucas was a part of it too. And you guys were extremely supportive. And I've never gotten an opportunity to say thank you. So I wanted to call in and say thank you. And, Buck, believe it or not, I still think you're a great person, and I'll always be in your corner.
Thank you, Chris. I know you were talking to Blaine back there. Did you hear the compliment that Chris just paid you? Oh, he's not paying attention to me. Thank you, Chris, for the call. I see. Is he referencing the PA? You didn't hear any of that.
No, I'm sorry. Blaine Bishop walked in here, and I was chatting up with the hitman.
Okay. He was just being very nice about, apparently we were supportive. I assume he's talking about the PA thing.
Oh, yeah, Chris Freeman, our guy in White House.
Yes.
Yeah, great guy.
He said thank you.
Awesome.
You weren't listening.
Love Chris.
It doesn't seem like you do. In fact, I can see you're still harboring a bitterness back there about all the different people that beat you out for the Titans PA job.
It was a fun little experiment.
It's in your eyes. Vilov's still trying to oust the current PA guy, even though I saw he did something ridiculous. Wasn't there a story running about the Titans PA guy making an outrageous donation to some kind of cause or something like that? Like a ton of money. Really, really, like a really, really feel-good story, and yet Vilov is still out for this man's job. Cracks me up. Anyway, 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls. One more segment for me. Oh, I have a bachelor party update. The groom has been informed that I've been bitching about the bachelor party, and it has made it to the group text. Find out what he said next. Yeah, Vegas is where I'm headed tomorrow. Got a bachelor party out there, so it is, I guess. Oh, well, how do we want to do this, Lucas? Because you said that you wanted me to cut a promo for tomorrow. You said you wanted, we've taken to doing these promos on the air. I think they're much better because we're the only show that doesn't like write them out and make them sound like, I hear some of the morning shows and they make me laugh because they're so stiff. Because I know they're clearly reading off a piece of paper. That's fine. You know, whatever. It's not like mine are any good. I'm just saying, hey, we have this X, Y, and Z at 10:20, and we have.
I'd argue yours are the worst.
Well, mine are for sure the worst because we don't. There's no planning or preparation in them. You tell me who I have tomorrow. I say the words into the microphone, then we go about our day. But I think that the way that we've taken to doing these things on the air has been infinitely more funny as a promo.
What will you be doing at 10 a.m. Central Time tomorrow?
At 10 a.m. Central Time?
Yes.
Oh, I'll probably be making breakfast. My flight doesn't leave until later in the afternoon.
You'll be making breakfast. I'll be on with Rep Brian. Much to discuss.
Please tell me that's the promo.
It can be.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. That's the promo. I'm in Vegas. I'll be making breakfast, though, during the show. I'll be listening. Lucas will be hosting. That's the promo. Exceptional work done by us. All right, so I teased this. The groom of the wedding, of the bachelor party that I don't want to go to. He's been informed. His flight has landed in Las Vegas. I got a text. Dan Buck on his radio show talking about how bad he doesn't want to go on this, quote, bachelor party in Vegas this weekend. Stay home, bub.
Oof.
I would.
Oof.
I would in a heartbeat. But I have too much love for this man that has texted me and told me to stay home. And I've committed this far, and also I don't think my flight's refundable. What do you mean? What are you oofing for back there? What's wrong?
I mean, I don't know. Now I feel bad for the guy.
Why?
Because you've been out here just roasting this bachelor party.
I haven't been roasting the bachelor party. I'm roasting the group text. I'm roasting that I don't know 14 of the 15 people in the group text. I'm roasting the fact that I'm going to be in Vegas for a day and a half, and I'm not going to be able to participate in the vast majority of activities with the people that I don't know. I think that's completely fair criticism. Why do you feel bad? You don't even have to deal with these people. I'm the one who's going to be out there with them. Assuming that, I don't get abandoned at the airport because I've been spending 3 hours a day bitching about the bachelor party that I'm going on. I have no regrets. Don't put people in group text for 6 months about a Las Vegas bachelor trip. It's nightmarish. Don't.
Think you'll have regrets after the weekend?
Regrets?
Right.
That I went? No, that's
sure?
me.
Like nothing else could happen.
Oh, sure. Like I'll spend too much money, but like I already put together my budget. I know how much money I have for gambling, how much money I have for food, how much money I have for booze, how much money is allotted for the hotel, on and on and on. So I'm good to go. There's really only so much damage I can do in a day and a half. Unless, it's like The Hangover and I get roofied by whichever of this group is the Allen of the group. There might be 5 of them, given that there's 15 people. We're ready for polls.
And now, the polls have to be updated. We've reached a crucial point in the show. It's time to update the polls. Take my hand, get to the chopper. Lucas Panzica will give us the final update. Why am I yelling? It's giving me a headache. But it's only a headache. It's not a tumor. Hasta la vista, baby. I'll be back. Why am I yelling?
By the way, I just finished watching that documentary, the little docuseries on Arnold Schwarzenegger on Netflix.
Good.
Awesome. It was awesome. Only 3 episodes. Highly recommend it to anybody. Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford.
And yet we've reduced him to a screaming, yelling idiot on our polls.
Who is the best high school football player you have ever seen? Ron Slay says John Henderson, who Slay played with at Pearl Cone. I bet that was certainly a sight to see. Slaw Dog says Sean Alexander. Ooh, Carter says Jalen Hurd at Beach High School.
Ooh, that's a good one. Who's yours?
I think it has. I've broadcasted a lot of Middle Tennessee high school football. The best player I've ever broadcasted, the most dominant player, has to be Destin Wade. And I'll lump in his twin brother Keaton as well at Summit High School. Just dominant. Both of those guys at Kentucky now. But in my entire life, it's Reuben Foster.
Ooh.
Auburn High School.
That's a good one.
He was in high school. We're the same age when I was in high school, and we played them in the first round of the playoffs my senior year. And one of my best friends, Ruben, also played running back.
No.
And one of my closest friends, who I'm still close with to this day, was our starting Mike linebacker. And he is scarred from that.
He was no Reuben Foster, is what you're saying.
No, not quite. My buddy Johnny, as much as I love him, is 5'9". Reuben Foster is not. And he was just running over people like a bowling ball running through pins.
Tyler Dial says Juwan Jennings ran all over our defense when he was at Blackman.
Yeah.
Could not stop him. Mine, I had the great misfortune of going up against Zach Martin, all-pro right guard for the Dallas Cowboys, in a semi-state game when he was at Bishop Chatard and I was at Memorial High School. My junior year, it's as badly as my body has felt in my entire life.
How would you grade Ran Carthon's first offseason as the Titans general manager? 56% give it a B, 28% say C, 12% an A, just 4% a D or worse. Our buddy Zach at Football Another F Word says I, incomplete.
I mean, because DeAndre Hopkins is out there. That's probably the most fair assessment. But I'd say, given what they had to work with, given what limitations were on them, I think a B is completely fair this offseason, even as disappointed as I know many of you were in the lack of wide receiver additions. It's not done yet.
Yeah, Tighten the Bleep Up on Twitter says, depends on how they rectify wide receiver. I like the group, but it's real thin. NWI and potentially Dowell are glorified special teamers.
Agreed.
So Blaine was talking about this yesterday on Blaine and Mickey. The problem that will be if Treylon Burks, knock on wood, were to get injured at any point this season. When you look at what they have in that room, it definitely magnifies the problem at the wide receiver room.
Did you not see what happened last year? There's a big difference when he was in the lineup and when he's not in the lineup.
It would essentially be the same, right?
Yeah. Well,
if Treylon Burks, it would just be Chris Moore instead of Robert Woods.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, the group, yes. But I invite you to go. Did you go look at that Warren Sharp thread that I sent to the group yesterday?
Oh, we hadn't talked about that, about Todd Downing.
About Warren Sharp, who's one of the best analytical minds in football, saying that he believed Todd Downing to be a sleeper cell.
A double agent.
A double agent.
To sabotage the Titans' offense.
Coordinating the Titans' offense. It's as strong of an indictment as I've seen of Todd Downing in a world where Todd Downing it seems to exist to get indicted.
What was the most important coordinator hire in the SEC this offseason? John says Liam Cohen back at Kentucky as offensive coordinator. Oh, this is a good one from Joe. Kevin Barbay as Mississippi State's offensive coordinator, tasked with replacing Mike Leach and transitioning away from the air raid. That's a great submission by Joe, as Will Rogers comes back as the most productive quarterback coming back in the SEC this year, but away from the air raid offense. What in the world is that going to look like for State?
I still think it's Alabama or Georgia, just because, most important. Well, who are the most important teams competing for championships? I would say that Alabama or Georgia are probably going to win that.
I wouldn't put Georgia in that just because of the continuity there. It's not as much of a wild card with Mike Bobo taking over. I'd replace them with Bobby Petrino, Texas A&M.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Do you want DeAndre Hopkins as bad as you wanted Julio Jones? 71% say yes. Mahogany explains no because I want D-Hop more. We had Reed tweet at us earlier today, said Julio Jones left much more of a scar than Randy Moss or Andre Johnson because the expectations much higher with that 2021 team.
That's fair, but he gave you more than any of them. Hell, he gave you almost as much as Robert Woods did last year in 6 less games. Tough scene.
Those are the Bulls.
That is the show. Lucas is me tomorrow with Rhett Bryan, you said?
With Rhett Bryan of Titans Radio.
You can listen to that tomorrow from 10 to 1. I will go on this bachelor party that I'm sure I'm no longer welcome on, given the amount of complaining that I've done about it today, but that's fine.
Have fun.
Yeah. We'll see. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you guys Monday.